everybody, welcome to Remrov's World of Autism. This is my first episode after Pilaf's passing, so it's very weird for me to continue it without Pilaf, to do a video without Pilaf now with me sitting on my shoulder, but who knows, maybe he's still with me sitting on my shoulder while I'm doing this video, so I'm just gonna keep on doing what I have been doing for a year and a half now. In this video I wanted to answer the question, why can public transportation be so extremely difficult for autistic people? I find public transportation extremely difficult, and when I tell people about it, they often give me the information and advice how to get to a certain place. They tell me which bus or which metro, subway to take, and then they think it's solved. But it is not at all about me not being able to navigate. I'm actually quite a very good navigator. So what is it all about then? When you take public transportation, you practically encounter all the difficulties autistic people can have, and all at the same time, including sensory issues or issues with communication, unpredictabilities and a lot of changes. And on top of that, while dealing with all those issues at the same time, it might indeed become a bit of a challenge to also navigate as well. It is extremely chaotic in public transportation, and it can cause a sensory overload. So I'll first start with the sensory issues during public transportation. While taking public transportation, there are a lot of different sensory input you have to deal with, like many sounds from people, the metro or the bus or the train itself. You deal with the bright lights often, and then the sight of all the people, and the sensory issues with touch. When it's extremely crowded, you have people bumping up against you. So that's a lot to deal with all at once. And when you're on a crowded bus or on a crowded metro, you also have to deal with a lot of faces of all those people. And they all have their facial expressions, and it's all confusing and very overwhelming. When I was still living in the Netherlands, I often took the bus and the train to school, to work, and I always chose a window seat, because when you have a window seat you can turn yourself away from all the other people and the noises, and you can just look outside and focus on what's going on outside. But here in Montreal I have noticed that it's practically impossible, or almost always impossible, to have a window seat. So then you have to sit in the middle of everybody, in the middle of all those sounds and people and all those faces, which is extremely overwhelming. Then on top of that you also have the sensory issues, the sensory input of the shaking and the trembling and the bumping of the metro or the bus or the train, whatever you're traveling on. Like I said before, autistic people don't have a filtering system to filter out the information that's only important to us. So all the sensory input that comes in, it comes in just as loud, and we have to process it all at the same time, which is just extremely overwhelming. When it is raining outside, then everything becomes even worse, because all the sounds are amplified because of the rain. All the sounds are just louder, and you have extra sounds from the rain falling on the streets and on the bus, and and the bus driving through puddles, etc. And then you also have to do with extra sensory inputs on your body, like the feeling of getting wet, or the wetness from raindrops dripping up on you from other people's wet coats or umbrellas, which is very, very difficult to deal with. All these things together can totally wipe me out for the rest of the day if I have to go somewhere for just an hour, for example. Then we also have to deal with a lot of unpredictability and changes, of course. Public transportation is always a bit unpredictable. I prefer the metro, the subway, the tube as they call it in other countries, because it's quite reliable and it runs fast and very often, and it's just often on time as well, so I prefer that. It's just great. Traveling by bus though, I find it extremely nerve-wracking, because often the bus is not on time and then it becomes so unpredictable because you don't know how long you still have to wait. Besides that, for the bus you are waiting outside while being exposed to all the elements of Mother Nature, which can cause even more sensory input. When you wait for the metro, the subway, you're inside, so you don't have to deal with sensory input from rain or wind or cold. You don't have to deal with that, so I find that just a lot easier. But in general, the unpredictability with public transportation, I'm always worrying that I'm not on time while waiting for the bus, etc. It just causes a lot of stress, and it's just nerve-wracking. And it just adds up to all the other things that I'm dealing with during public transportation. Often I leave way too early, so I find myself arriving way too early and an appointment, and then often it's fine if you're in an area where there are other things to do and you can sit down and have a tea or so, but it's not so wonderful when you end up in the middle of nowhere where there's nothing to do. Then you also encounter issues with communication. When you buy a ticket for the bus or the metro, the subway or a train, you have to communicate. It involves communicating, which is not always easy. On top of that, when you go to a strange place, you have to ask for directions, which can also be quite challenging. I often practice beforehand in my head constantly, like what do I want to ask and which tone of voice do I use when I'm asking something like for directions. It just doesn't go automatically, so it takes quite a lot of energy to just practice beforehand already. When I'm traveling somewhere, I'm always happy that it's close to a metro station, to the subway station, because it means I don't have to take another bus. When I go from my house to the closest metro station, I take the bus, and then the metro journey after that is often just enough for me, enough sensory input, enough energy spent, and enough draining. But often I have an appointment that is further away, so which means I have to take another bus, and yeah, that's often too much for me, too draining, and too much energy it just costs me. And when you take another bus from a certain metro station, it often means that you end up in unfamiliar surroundings, which makes me extremely uncomfortable, especially when you're out in the middle of nowhere and you don't recognize anything. It just makes me cold inside. I don't like that. And then navigating can indeed become an issue then as well, because the journey took so long and so far that it took so much out of me already that it becomes very hard to focus for me. And when you're in the bus in unfamiliar surroundings, then it's difficult to find out which stop you have to get off. You can find the information, of course, online, but if it says 14 stops and you count the 14 stops, but the bus hasn't stopped at 3 stops, then you get off at the 17th stop without knowing it, and then you can get a bit lost. I'm always happy if a bus has a display that tells you which stop is going to be next. That is always really helpful. Sometimes I also ask the bus driver if he wants to announce the stop where I have to get off, and yeah, sometimes they're really helpful, but it does require communication again, and communication can be more difficult in a chaotic and crowded place, which a bus often is. And besides that, bus drivers are not always nice and friendly, so it can be an issue as well. Also, when they do want to announce it for you, then they have to say it loud enough for me to be able to filter out their voice out of all the other noises. So it's just stressful. Often during public transportation, I put on my MP3 player, I listen to music just to cancel out all the other noises, which helps, it makes it easier. But when you travel in an unfamiliar place, then it costs so much energy out of me to focus that I can't have my music on top of that, because it's just too much. And then I can't focus where I have to get off. And that also makes the dealing with all the other sensory inputs even more difficult. So, a lot of other autistic people, they struggle with exactly the same things for exactly the same reasons. So it's very important to know how you can help an autistic person in public transportation situations, or to even avoid public transportation. It is very important to know that it is extremely difficult to explain how draining it can be, all the sensory issues, and how difficult that can be. So when somebody talks to you about it, it's very important to take it very seriously. Also, it can really help to make reasonable accommodations. When you meet an autistic person somewhere, then you can better decide to meet at a place close to the home of the autistic person instead of close to your home. That you just make the journey towards their neighborhood. They can also help. You can also offer autistic person a ride somewhere. That helps, because traveling by car is just 10 times more easier than public transportation. And when you travel with an autistic person by public transportation, then you might have to accept the fact that this person won't be able to communicate with you, because having a conversation in a situation that's already too taxing and too draining, that is almost impossible. So yeah, those are very important things to keep in mind. This was it. I hope you found my video, I hope you liked it and that you learned from it. Subscribe to my YouTube channel to stay updated about my new videos. Please, if you have any questions, you can ask them in the comments below, or you can send me a message. And I hope to see you with my next videos again. I wish you a great day. Bye!